Hey, everybody. My name is Melissa, and I am the co-founder of Cedar and Ink. We're a company that is dedicated to helping people host easily and meaningfully. Annabelle reached out and asked if we would do a blog post specifically on hosting for people who struggle with chronic pain, which I'm sure is why that you are reading this blog. And I felt, first of all, really, really honored to be able to be invited to do this. So prior to starting Cedar and Ink, actually, while I was still working before this, I actually worked as a PA, physician assistant, for 11 years, specifically with dialysis patients. These people were just, oh my gosh, just loved them. They were amazing. I had amazing patients. And for anybody who knows dialysis patients or knows people who have end-stage renal disease, you might know that they struggle with immense chronic pain, whether that's from the neuropathy or from the dialysis treatments themselves or from a myriad of other challenges, that can be extraordinarily debilitating. So before I even jump in here, I just wanted to take 1 minute, and I just really wanted to just offer empathy for where you are. And I really wanted to validate, especially just from my experience with my patients, how incredibly challenging it is to live with chronic pain. I think one thing that I know, and just from the stories and walking with patients, is just that the challenge that I would see and so often hear with people with chronic pain is that there's a lot of unseenness, right? Like, my patients who have a big open wound, it's like very obvious, like, oh yeah, like that hurts, or if somebody's like having a heart attack, it's like, it's very obvious that there is like a need and a struggle. But I have found so often with my chronic pain patients that there is such this element of isolation and aloneness in the chronic pain. So I just even want to say for a moment that if you are in there in your journey where you feel isolated or alone, whether it's because of neuropathy or fibromyalgia, or maybe you've got, like a bad back from years of scoliosis or injury. Maybe you were in a car accident. Maybe you've had chemotherapy or radiation and are still suffering from the effects of it. Whatever it is, I just want to acknowledge that. And I just want to take a minute before I even dove in, just to say that like you're a warrior. Like, you are a warrior. You are fighting a very silent, very unseen battle every single day. And you are amazing just for even taking on that fight. And I know that you're probably thinking like, I don't have a choice. And yeah, you don't. And yet like you do have a choice to show up every single day, which is what you're doing. And so I just wanted to validate that first. Secondly, I just wanted to offer some tips on hosting. And obviously what I always say to everybody is take what feels helpful and let go of what doesn't. We are actually in the middle right now of a free 6-week stress-free holiday challenge. You are welcome to join us. Feel free to come over to it's our Facebook group. I'm sure that Annabelle will post it in this. And there'll be a ton of, we have both the relational and the practical elements of how to get through the holidays in a stress-free way. What I'm offering here today is a few maybe modifications specifically for people who are struggling with chronic pain and feel like their capacity is so diminished. So one of the things that we first talk about when it comes to stress is like we have to define stress before we're able to then figure out how to alleviate it. And the formula that I use for stress is expectations minus your capacity minus your resources equals stress. So for instance, if there's really high expectations and very limited capacity and very limited resources, then your stress is going to be really high. The way we define expectations is anything that you're doing or hosting, right? So maybe it's anything from having a friend over to a large event, but whatever it is and your expectations for what that event or that moment is going to be, or the anticipated expectations, or maybe you're hosting people for the holidays. That's the expectation. The bigger the expectation, the more sort of the need is to fill. Capacity is anything within your own personhood, whether that's your emotional capacity, your physical capacity, your spiritual, intellectual, any of those would be like within your own personhood. Resources is anything outside of you. So that could be anything from finances to other people helping to what you already own or what you could buy, or to something that could be done for you, or a service that you could rent or use or someone could do for you. And then obviously stress is the difference between the expectation and then what you have either within your personhood or outside of your personhood to be able to meet that. And so what our goal is with the Stress-Free Holiday Challenge is to increase capacity and to increase resources, but also maybe to invite people to take a look at the expectations that they have for themselves, for an event, and see if there's a place that they can lower it. Because the lower the expectations and the increased capacity and resources, the lower the stress, right? So that's really the whole goal. And that's what I want to kind of briefly talk on today, specifically from a pain standpoint. So the first thing I want to touch on is expectation. If you are in a place where you are feeling extraordinarily limited by your chronic pain, the first thing I would invite you to do is take a look at the expectation of what you are looking at doing, right? So let's say you're hosting like family for the holidays, right? Or you want to have some friends over. One of the best things you can do is make sure that you are not asking yourself to do more than you have the capacity for. And one of the first ways to free yourself, there's two real ways to free yourself from those expectations. The first one is I'd encourage you to start from a place of gratitude. So maybe over the next week or 2 weeks, to take a moment, even 1 minute every single day, and for that entire minute to practice gratitude for yourself, for your space, and for your things. What that does, and the reason that contentment is so incredibly powerful, is it takes our grasp and our sort of need for that what we don't have, and instead it draws our attention and starts to increase joy and contentment for what is. It starts to sort of release the expectations of what isn't there. And it starts to foster a sense of excitement. And then again, gratitude fosters more gratitude for what already is. It gives us a creative lens to see our life in a new way, maybe with more resourcefulness, with a new sense of how we can do something differently, et cetera. So my first encouragement would be that, especially because chronic pain can be so incredibly limiting and it really limits your capacity, right? In thinking of that equation, the expectations minus capacity minus resources, we're going to acknowledge right up front that your capacity is going to be a lot more limited. Just naturally, you probably don't have as much energy to do the things you used to do. You might not have even the ability to do things that you used to do. Like for instance, if you have arthritis, you might not be able to chop a whole bunch of vegetables to make this huge gourmet dinner like you used to be able to do or would want to try to do. So first of all is saying, what can I do? And I'm going to choose to be grateful for that. Once you've been able to maybe reframe the expectation in a way that says, yeah, that would feel like something that I would be able to do, the next thing I'm going to offer you to do is to grieve what isn't. I think this is especially important for anybody going through chronic illness or through loss. And the reality is that chronic pain creates loss. There is a loss of capacity that you have that can be again, so grieving and incredibly, it can be just flat out tragic. And I just even want to take a minute to acknowledge that. Because again, I think sometimes it can be hard, especially when you might look so healthy from the outside, for people to really understand and be able to empathize. So I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that there's a lot of loss with chronic pain. The reason I think it's so important to grieve what isn't is so then it will free you up to hold what is. Part of grief is also releasing any comparison. So for instance, and maybe it's hard and you compare yourself to what your friends can do or what your family can do or what it looks like on Instagram or Pinterest. So first of all, again, maybe grieving what isn't, releasing the comparison for what is, and just acknowledging that. And maybe the most comparison that you need to let go of is the comparison to your old self. Well, I used to be able to do this. I used to be able to have this much energy. I used to be able to, host X, Y, and Z, and it wasn't a problem. And so even just grieving the difference between what was and what is, in the goal to be able to let go of that comparison, and also to be able to then hold what is with new hands. So once we've kind of addressed expectation, we've been able to sort of release some of the comparison and grieve some of that, then the next thing is to start to build what can be. And the first element that I love for doing that is intentionality. So what we foster is what we grow. So when we are fostering intentionality towards other people and towards the guests that we want to have into our home, that is naturally going to already foster an environment that invites people to feel known and cared for in our home. It is not about our space. It is about our personhood. That's the thing that is going to be most invitational. You could be in a perfect 10,000 square foot house and your place could still be super, super uninviting to somebody because of the level of anxiety or perfection or control and then maybe that's not you. Maybe you know someone like that. Maybe you're like, man, I've been in those places where they look like they should be so invitational, but rather I feel so uncomfortable. I feel so out of my element, or the person themselves is so not invitational that instead I feel uptight the entire time I'm in the home, right? And that's not a good feeling, right? Whereas the opposite can be true too. You walk into into home and yeah, maybe there's laundry and dishes that haven't been done and like the place is a mess, but like you feel so comfortable because the person is so invitational. And that kind of invitationalness starts with intentionality. So I would even begin to invite you to start to foster intentionality towards the people that you want to invite into your home and the kind of event that you want to have. So the way to do that is, number one, think of 3 words that you want your event or moment or holiday to be. So maybe, for instance, it's like you want to have a couple friends over and you want it to be deep, warm, and meaningful, right? So you're going to start to like ask every decision that you make in regard to hosting, filter it through those 3 words. Is this going to foster more depth, more warmth, and more meaning? If the answer is yes, then you can make those choices as long as they're within your capacity, right? If not, then you let those go. Or maybe it's like, I want to have a formal, elegant dinner, right? Like, well, dinner wouldn't be a descriptive word. Formal, elegant, and like romantic setting, right? So then you're gonna take all of those different, you're gonna take those 3 words and you're gonna filter all the decisions that you make. It really helps because what it does is it fosters a cohesiveness with your event. And it already naturally starts to filter. So if you pull something out and you're like, oh, this is like vintage and fun, then you can immediately say, oh, that's not the vibe that I'm going for. I really want, again, more formal, elegant, and like those 3 words instead. So I say that just to say that's a great filter, and it helps to eliminate a lot of the extra noise. The other thing is that it really helps you to get in the mindset of what is it that I'm trying to achieve relationally here? Because the whole point of hosting is to invite deeper relationships and deeper friendships, right? That's why we host. We want to actually go deeper with people. We want to know people. We want to be known. And so that's what we want to foster. So for instance, if you want a really fun game night that's maybe more light and airy, then that's one thing. If you want more of a deep, more meaningful night, then you start to think about that and you start to both set that intention in your personhood. Maybe if you're a person of faith, you're praying for that. You're inviting the Lord to be able to come in and to already create his presence of vulnerability in that space. Or you're just like continuing to really think about these people in a way that is so intentional. The reason that matters, again, is what you foster is what you will grow. What you sow is what you reap. So even just doing that, again, especially considering limiting capacity, if you're even just thinking, how can I make people feel cared for? How can I make them feel known? How can I make them feel warm and seen and loved? Is there any allergies that they have? Is there anything that like, oh man, they love that drink. I could order that drink. Like I could go get that at my next grocery run because they love lemonade, right? Or like, oh, like they're gluten-free. I could get some gluten-free crackers for my cheese board. I could do that. Like that'd be easier. I could just literally leave the box out just to show them that I care about them and that I was thinking of them. That all of those little intentions are going to add up into a really big, powerful effect. And the last element that I'm going to invite you today is what I'm going to call excellence within your capacity. So it would be way better and will be way better for everybody involved for you to know your capacity and then choose those really practical points of hosting, whether that's food, drinks, cleaning, decorating. Make sure that you're doing it both within your capacity and then make sure that what you can do it really well. So for instance, it would be way better for you to have, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes and I'm going to put a charcuterie board out that I'm going to really spend a lot of time on versus I feel like I have to spend a whole hour making food and like you feel like you don't do any of it well. And it's like, and you're exhausted by the end and your friends show up or your family show up and you are so exhausted that you have nothing left to give them. You are just like at the end of yourself. That's not going to be bringing excellence and it's not really bringing your best. And then you also don't get to really invite their best to be known and to be cared for. So it would be so much better to figure out what you can do and then do that well and just take the time to really focus on that. Even if it's like maybe it's as simple as what I can do is light 4 candles and I can really put them in a space that is going to kind of draw everybody in. And I'm going to think about the sense of those candles, of what people would like. And I'm going to be really intentional about maybe placing them in one space. And that's going to be how I'm going to really create a warm vibe in this area. And that's what I have the capacity for. And that's great. I think that is so beautiful because, again, you're acknowledging what you have the capacity for and what you don't. Or maybe you give yourself tiers. Maybe you're like, okay, my pain varies a lot. On a Saturday, I could be feeling it 90%. On Sunday, I'm down to 3% or 0%, right? So maybe it's even giving yourself grace to be able to say, I'm going to be able to give myself grace. Say, I'd like to do this, but if I can't do this, then I'll lower my expectation and do what I can really, really well and let go of everything else. And then give myself immense grace, give myself immense just kindness. Maybe the best thing that you can do during this holiday season, and I said this in one of our videos, is like maybe the best thing that you can do is not decorate your space. Maybe it's just praying for your space and inviting God's presence and his peace and his unity and his kindness to overtake your house and to be palpable in your space. Maybe it's not buying more things. Maybe the best thing you can do is to give attention or intentionality towards one person or the guests that you have in your home. Maybe the best thing you can do is not cleaning frenetically, especially if you don't have the capacity. Maybe it is instead to be able to invite people into the vulnerability of your real life, the real messes, the real challenges, and to be able to say, this is where I am, and to actually invite deeper conversation and deeper relationship because of the vulnerability, the strength of your vulnerability in that moment. So I hope this was helpful. Obviously, as I always say, please take what is helpful. Please let go of anything that doesn't. If you want more information, we would love to have you join us at the Stress-Free Holiday Challenge. All of the videos are about halfway through right now, but all of the videos are still posted, so they're all really accessible, and it's an amazing community that's super helpful. We would even love to hear from you, and if you have any questions specific to your space or like specific challenges that you'd like help thinking through and be able to find unique options or solutions for, we would be delighted to help out. So anyways, here's to helping you host easily and meaningfully and thrive personally in this holiday season. Thanks again and take care.